The Hale Regent Hotel gleamed like a palace forged for American. Royalty, towering marble columns, gold-veined floors polished to a mirror sheen, and crystal chandeliers that dripped light onto the rich like melted diamonds. But beneath the glamour lived a hierarchy sharper than a knife's edge. And at the top of that hierarchy stood Veronica Hale, owner of the hotel, heir to 3 generations of wealth, and a woman who could deliver, cruelty the same, way some delivered compliments, effortlessly, elegantly, and with an unmistakable smile. That evening, the hotel throbbed with the energy of the Culinary Excellence Gala, a 10,000 per plate spectacle where wealthy guests floated across the ballroom in tailored suits and shimmering gowns. Camera crews from major food networks filled every corner, prepping for a night that was supposed to celebrate luxury, competition, and the illusion of merit. Everything gleamed. Everything sparkled. Everything screamed prestige. Everything, except the woman kneeling in the hallway with a mop. Maya Brooks, 36 years old and exhausted from working 2 jobs, dragged her mop across the marble floor with a practiced, weary rhythm. Her gray uniform clung to her skin from hours of cleaning. Her hair was tied back in a simple knot, and dark circles shadowed her eyes after another sleepless night. Yet there was something unbroken in her expression, a quiet strength, a fire buried deep. Veronica Hale spotted her like a stain on perfection. Her heels clicked sharply, anger already simmering. "Excuse me?" she hissed, voice drenched with upper-class disgust. "Why is there someone mopping my hallway during a $10,000 gala?" Maya froze, straightened, kept her eyes down. "Sorry, ma'am. I was told to clean this section before service." "Clean?" Veronica scoffed, stepping closer until Maya could smell the cold floral perfume she wore. "You smell like bleach and struggle. You're dripping poverty on my marble floors." Her voice rose, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "People like you stay invisible. That's your place here." She turned sharply, red gown sweeping behind her as if the moment itself offended her. Laughter from her entourage followed like a cruel echo. When the doors shut and the hallway returned to silence, Maya allowed herself one single breath, slow, steady, defiant. Then she looked toward the kitchen doors. Warm light spilled from the window. The smell of saffron and butter drifted out. It felt like a hand reaching into her chest, pulling an old memory forward. Maya had walked the back halls of this hotel for 3 years. Always at night, always ignored. No one bothered to ask her name. No one imagined she had another life, another world hidden inside her. But in the dim employee locker room, tucked behind her spare uniform, she kept a brown leather recipe notebook, worn, stained, filled with hundreds of handwritten notes. The recipes weren't random. They were a legacy. Her grandmother, Ruby Brooks, had once been the head chef of this very hotel in the late 70s and early 80s. A culinary visionary, a woman with hands that created flavors people still whispered about, though no one remembered her name, because the hotel had made sure to erase it. Behind Maya's locker door hung a faded photograph. Her as a 10-year-old girl standing beside her grandmother in a professional kitchen, both holding a golden pie, both smiling like they could feed the world. Ruby taught her more than cooking. She taught her to listen to food, to cook with memory, to understand that flavor was deeper than technique. But the hotel never honored Ruby. Instead, they used her, took her recipes, fired her, and pretended she never existed. Maya felt that same dismissal every night she scrubbed floors, while someone else got credit for dishes born from her family's soul. Her life had narrowed into survival: night shift janitor at the Hale Regent, daytime prep cook at a struggling Harlem diner, single mother raising Jordan, her 8-year-old son, 4 hours of sleep on a good night, 2 trains and a bus to get anywhere, bills stacked like enemies on the kitchen counter. Still, she held on. Every night before work, she looked at Jordan's crayon drawing taped inside her locker, her wearing a white chef's coat, labeled "Best Chef in the World." My mom. She kept it close to her heart, a promise she refused to break. In the hallway now, Maya gripped her mop, not because she belonged there, but because she had nowhere else to be. The hotel saw a cleaner. Veronica saw a problem, Guests saw nothing at all. But soon, very soon, the world would see exactly who Maya was, and in the span of a single night, the invisible woman would become impossible to ignore. The Hale Regent's kitchen, normally a disciplined symphony, had become pure chaos. Stainless steel counters glistened under bright lights. Camera crews from 3 food networks hovered like vultures waiting for drama. 5 elite chefs prepped dishes worth more than some people's rent. Heat thundered from stoves, knives clattered, shouts ricocheted off metal walls. And at the center of it all stood Chef Liana Mercer, the hotel's star, a woman whose face appeared in magazine spreads and luxury food festivals. She adjusted her pristine white coat as she hovered over a massive copper pot filled with her famous saffron lobster bisque, the dish that built her career, the dish she was certain would win the $500,000 charity prize, the dish everyone believed only she could create. Only she couldn't, not really. Not tonight. Not ever. She didn't know the bisque's soul. She only knew the steps. The original soul had belonged to a woman she'd never met, Ruby Brooks, but she didn't know that yet. Steam swirled around Liana as she dipped her spoon into the shimmering golden broth. She tasted. Her brows tightened. Too flat, she muttered. She tossed in extra salt, her default solution, frowning deeper. That's not the problem, whispered someone. Liana's head snapped toward the sound, but all she saw was the blurred motion of workers rushing by. She didn't realize the voice belonged to the woman mopping floors just outside the kitchen. The clock ticked closer to service. Then disaster struck. A young prep cook. Ramen Ellis, only 3 weeks into the job, staggered under the weight of a massive pot of boiling water. The kitchen floor, slick with oil and melted butter, betrayed him. His foot hit an electrical cord he hadn't seen. Time seemed to slow. The pot tilted. The water arched. Liana screamed. Too late. The boiling water slammed into her station, knocking the copper pot off the burner. It crashed to the tiles with a sound that silenced the entire kitchen. 4 hours of work. Saffron worth more than gold. 12 lobsters. Gone, in a swirling golden stream that disappeared into the floor drain. Liana's scream split the room. No! 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 The kitchen doors burst open. Veronica Hale stormed in, her red gown trailing behind her like fire. What in God's name is going on in my kitchen? Liana's voice was a strangled whisper. The bisque! It's gone! I can't remake it in time. Veronica's face hardened into ice. You don't have time. Adrian Kane arrives at his table in 15 minutes. He specifically requested the bisque. Liana felt her lungs collapsing. Veronica didn't care about her excuses. She cared about power, prestige, and impressions. Can anyone here make a lobster bisque in 15 minutes? Veronica shouted. Silence spread like frost. No chef dared raise their hand. No one wanted to risk their career. Outside, in the service corridor, Thomas Reed, the maintenance engineer, stood on a step stool changing a flickering bulb. He heard everything through the thin walls. He paused, listening, eyes narrowing. Down the hall. Maya Brooks, entire body tense, had frozen mid-mop. Their eyes met across 20 feet of scuffed linoleum. 2 people no one ever looked at. 2 people who had nothing but truth to give. Thomas climbed down slowly. This was the moment he had waited for. 40 years of silence was enough. He walked into the kitchen with the calm steadiness of a man who knew what needed to be done. Mrs. Hale, he said firmly. Veronica spun. Who are you? Thomas Reed, ma'am. Head of maintenance. 42 years. His posture straightened, dignity shining through the worn fabric of his uniform. And I know someone who can help you. Veronica stared as if he'd spoken nonsense. You? She scoffed. You expect me to trust a maintenance man with a $10,000 dish? No, ma'am, Thomas replied. You should trust the person you've never bothered to look at. Her lips tightened. Fine. 15 minutes. But if this mystery person fails, you're both gone. Not just from this hotel, you'll never work in this industry again. Thomas didn't blink. He stepped out, walked into the corridor, and there she was. Maya stood still, her mop handle shaking in her hand. "You heard all that?" he asked quietly. "I heard. You know what I'm asking you to do?" Maya looked at the kitchen doors, the glowing lights, the stainless steel counters where legends once cooked. "My grandmother's bisque," she whispered. "Liana's signature dish. I know where it really came from." Thomas nodded. "I know you do. Cook first. The truth comes later." Maya dropped her mop. Her entire life had been preparation for a moment she never expected would come. She walked into the back prep kitchen, a cramped, flickering room no one ever used. No cameras, no judges. Just the harsh hum of an old fluorescent bulb and the distant roar of the Gala. There were barely any ingredients available. Shrimp shells from the trash, one lonely lobster tail, basic aromatics, cheap cream, common spices, nothing a French chef would dare touch. But Maya didn't cook French. She cooked Brooks. She closed her eyes. "Okay, Grandma," she whispered. "Let's see if you're still with me." Her hands began to move, not hesitantly, but like a musician returning to her instrument after too long. Shrimp shells hit butter with a violent sizzle. Tomato paste caramelized into something dark and beautiful. Flames rose as she splashed in brandy, 3 feet high. Thomas, blocking the doorway, watched with awe. "She moves just like Ruby," he breathed. Maya warmed cream separately, dropping saffron threads into it, letting them bloom instead of burning them. She added herbs, wine, depth, built on depth. Then she did the unthinkable. She reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small container from home. White miso, Ruby's secret. A single drop of bourbon, Ruby's fingerprint on every dish. "Just 1 drop," Maya whispered. "For you, Grandma." The bisque simmered into a velvet golden silk. She strained it with trembling hands. She plated it. She slid it toward Thomas with seconds left. "It's done," she whispered. "Get it out there. Don't tell them it was me." She put her janitor apron back on, picked up the mop, and walked away. As the most extraordinary dish in the building left with Thomas. In the ballroom, Adrian Kane, billionaire, philanthropist, and a man raised on food made with soul, lifted the spoon to his lips. The moment the bisque touched his tongue, his world stopped. He tasted memory. He tasted childhood. He tasted home. He tasted Ruby Brooks. Liana approached with a forced smile. "My signature bisque, Mr. Kane." "No," Adrian said softly, powerfully. "This isn't yours." Chef Jean-Pierre Laurent, a French culinary legend sitting beside him, tasted it too. "This," he whispered, "is soul. Not technique, not precision. This is ancestry." The judges murmured. The cameras zoomed in. The room changed, and somewhere in a dim hallway, Maya pushed her mop and waited for a world that did not know her name to finally notice her. The ballroom went quiet the moment Adrian Kane set his spoon down. The taste pulled him backward in time, to kitchens filled with steam and laughter, to a grandmother who cooked with love instead of ego, to a childhood memory so sharp it forced tears into his eyes. Guests watched him with a kind of nervous awe as he stood and announced, in a voice that carried through the entire gala, that the bisque he'd just eaten could not possibly be the work of Chef Liana Mercer. He said it with conviction, with history in his tone, and with a certainty that made the room pulse with unease. Liana tried to smile, but it collapsed instantly as Adrian repeated himself. This dish was not hers. He knew because the flavor profile, the ingredients, the soul of it, belonged to another cook entirely. His grandmother had once worked in this very hotel in the early '80s, he revealed. and he recognized her influence in every drop. The judges leaned forward, the cameras zooming in, the audience whispering as Liana stammered about a spilled pot and a last-minute remake. Adrian shut that down with a single look. Then he asked the question that changed the entire night. "Who made this?" Liana's voice failed her. Veronica Hale's eyes narrowed with rising fury, and finally, in a trembling whisper, Liana choked out the truth. "The janitor." The uproar was instant. Guests gasped, reporters whispered, security guards surged forward at Veronica's command. They stormed down the hallway and found Maya Brooks standing silently with her mop, eyes full of fear but spirit still intact. Without warning, they grabbed her by the arms. Maya struggled, demanding to know why, but Veronica appeared in her red gown, slicing through the air with her authority as she declared Maya had trespassed in the kitchen and violated health codes. Maya didn't flinch. She said calmly that Veronica's family had stolen her grandmother Ruby's recipes, erased her from history, and continued to profit from her creations. Veronica snapped back, accusing Maya of lying, then ordered the guards to remove her immediately. They dragged Maya through the hallway, past the polished, gold-framed mirrors and marble floors, toward the service exit, like she was trash being taken out. As they shoved her through the cold metal door, something slipped from her pocket and floated to the floor. It was Jordan's drawing, her son's little crayon portrait of her wearing a chef's hat labeled "Best Chef in the World, My Mom." A guard stepped on it without even noticing, smearing a boot print across the colors as the door slammed behind her. Outside, under the freezing night air, Maya collapsed to the ground, clutching her arms, tears finally escaping after years of staying strong. For the first time in a long time, she felt small like the hotel wanted her to feel. And yet even then, something inside her refused to break entirely. Back inside, Thomas Reed, the maintenance engineer who had watched the hotel erase Ruby's name decades ago, spotted the crushed drawing on the floor. His heart squeezed. He picked up the wrinkled, boot-stained paper with trembling hands. Then he walked straight to the ballroom carrying something he had hidden for 40 years, a worn leather notebook containing every original recipe Ruby Brooks ever wrote for the hotel. When Veronica tried to speak, Thomas cut her off. He handed the notebook to Adrian, who opened it and froze when he saw Ruby's handwriting, the dates, the notes, the ingredients, everything. Adrian looked up in shock, realizing the truth. The dishes his grandmother had cherished and passed down had actually come from Ruby Brooks, and the hotel had stolen them. The entire room felt it, the lie, the theft, the injustice. Adrian turned to Veronica with a fury that cracked the air. "You fired the granddaughter of the woman who built your menu," he said, voice heavy and controlled. Veronica tried to defend herself, but not even her voice could withstand the truth spilling across the ballroom like a broken dam. In that moment, Maya walked back into the ballroom. Her eyes were swollen, her uniform wrinkled, but her spine was straight, her steps steady. She held Jordan's drawing in her hand, gripping it like a lifeline. Adrian approached her gently and asked if she had made the bisque. She admitted she did, not out of pride, but out of loyalty to her grandmother's legacy. He asked if she had cooked it from memory. She said no, she cooked it from legacy. Something inside Adrian broke open then. He asked her to cook again, here, now, in front of everyone, using her grandmother's teachings, her own hands, her own story. Veronica tried to interfere, but the entire room had turned against her. She was no longer the woman who commanded respect, she was the woman who buried talent. Maya walked to the central cooking station, the brightest spotlight in the room shining directly on her. Her hands shook for 1 second, then went still, steady, confident. She gathered ingredients, short ribs, coffee grounds, red wine, herbs. She cooked with movements that looked like memory, like ancestral rhythm, like faith. Every sizzle, Every flame, every breath of steam felt like a chapter being rewritten. When she plated the dish and handed it to Adrian, the entire ballroom leaned forward. Adrian tasted it, and instantly tears filled his eyes. It was the exact dish his grandmother cooked for him on his 10th birthday, the last birthday she lived long enough to see. That memory hit him hard, and he began to cry openly, unapologetically. And then he applauded, slowly at first, then louder, until the whole room stood up and applauded with him. Veronica tried one last attempt to speak, to spin the story, to reclaim control, but no one cared. Maya stepped forward holding her son's drawing and said the words that would be replayed on televisions worldwide. "You said I smelled like poverty. I do. I smell like late-night shifts, bus rides, cleaning chemicals, raising a child alone, fighting for a dream no one sees. But these hands," she lifted her hands, "can make a billionaire cry with one bite." The room roared. It felt like justice. It felt like history correcting itself. In the aftermath, Veronica Hale was removed from her position pending a full investigation. Chef Leanna Mercer's career dissolved under public outrage. The story of the stolen recipes made national news. And Adrian Kane personally funded Maya's dream restaurant in Tribeca, a place she named Brooks Table, to honor her grandmother. Lines wrapped around the block. Critics called her the soul of American cooking, and she hired people like her, workers who had been invisible for too long, giving them the chance no one gave her. The first thing she placed on the wall of her restaurant was Jordan's drawing, boot print and all, not as a reminder of humiliation, but as a reminder of the night she refused to stay invisible. And for the first time in her life, when she looked into the mirror, she saw not a janitor, not a struggling mother, but a chef who had reclaimed her family's legacy and built a new one with her own two hands.